everyone, welcome back to another Swift tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be learning how to build a music app. So I'm personally super excited about this video, and what we're going to be building is an app like this. So we've got our list of tracks, and I've just copy and pasted the same 3 songs just so we have some content here. We can pick a song, which we'll start playing it. Of course, we can pause it. We can adjust the volume. So, like so. We can skip tracks, and I don't want to play these other songs too much to get a copyright strike, but we can go forward and backwards. We can of course dismiss this player, and yeah, basically builds a app very similar to the native music player that is fully functional with the core functionality. That said, make sure you smash that like button down below for this and future videos. Subscribe if you're new. Get Xcode ready, and let's jump right into it. So we're going to get started by creating a new Xcode project. We're going to stick with a single view app. We'll call this project My Music and save it on our desktop. The first thing we need to do is bring in some audio and some images, which will serve as the album covers. So I grabbed some from the internet right before starting this video. So let's come into our assets file and create 3 image assets. And they'll be cover 1, 2, and 3. And let's grab the images from our desktop and just drag them in one by one. And I'm not keeping the order consistent in here. I'm not sure which audio track is which, but if they're misaligned in terms of album cover and audio track, we can always go back and update it. The next thing we need to do is bring in the audio. So let's create a new folder here and call it audio just to keep things organized. Let's grab these 3 MP3 files and drag them in to this folder. Make sure this box is checked. This will actually copy the asset into your project and not just reference it from where you're dragging it in from. So let's expand our Xcode window to give ourselves some more room to work. Let's select our simulator of choice, hit Command R to build and run just to make sure things are compiling, and we'll see an empty application here. So the first thing we need to design is the screen that shows a list of our songs, our tracks essentially. And the second thing is going to be when we click on one of those songs, we want to present a player view controller, which actually lets us play the song, go to the next song, previous, etc., etc. So let's do the list of songs first. So let's go to the view controller. And actually I'll mention, some people have asked how I get this pop-up search window thing. If you hit Command-Shift-O, you'll see that you get this window, and it lets you search for project files across the whole project. If you have a massive project, it's super helpful. I've worked on some projects with over like 100,000 files, and it's impossible to find them here. So super handy tool there. So in this view controller, we're gonna leverage a table view to show a list of tracks. So let's create a table view outlet, and we're gonna set it up. If you're not familiar with table views, I've got a separate video that I encourage you to take a look at, which goes into depth about how to do table views, basics, as well as customizing them. So let's set this table view up with a delegate and data source. And the table is going to need number of rows, cell for row, did select row, and let's implement these. So for number of rows, we want to show the number of songs that we have. So let's create an array up here, and we'll call it songs. And for now, it'll be an array of song objects, and we're going to create this song object below that'll be empty. It'll just be a struct called song, and we'll fill this in a second. But we're essentially going to return a number of rows, the number of songs in our array. For the cell for row index function, we want to dequeue a cell from the table view, and we're going to say dequeue cell with an identifier of cell for the given index path. We want to return the cell, and we're going to configure the cell here in a moment. For the did select cell function, we want to unselect, which is basically unhighlighting that cell with an animation. And we want to present the player. So the player that we're going to present, we're going to have to pass in our array of songs as well as the position of which song we selected. And the reasoning is we want the position because that song should start playing. And we want the array because if the person hits next track or previous track, the player controller needs to know the order of the songs in the array that are coming in so it can adjust itself and play the previous or next track accordingly. So the way we're going to present the controller after defining those variables, so let position is going to be that, and we already have the songs array, which is just songs. But the way we're going to basically present the controller is guard let vc equals storyboard dot instantiate view controller with an identifier of player. Now we have not created this player yet, so I don't want anyone to get confused of where that's coming in from. We're going to create it in a second. But we're going to say after that, present VC animated true. So hit Command B, app should still be building. You could ignore this warning for now, it's because we're not using this variable. But let's set up a few other things before we run it in our simulator. If you run it right now, it'll actually crash because we have not connected this IB outlet yet. But anyways, let's fill out this song struct. A song has a name, it has a album name, it has a artist name, it needs a image name, which will be the album cover, and it needs a track name, which will be the actual audio. In our array of songs, we need to basically add song objects. So before we set up the table view, we're gonna call a function called configure songs, and this function is basically going to append in song objects into this array. And let's create these objects. Let me just hit return before all of these, make it easier to see. So the name of the first song is gonna be Viva La Vida. No idea what the album name is. So we're gonna type in some dummy stuff here. It's by Coldplay. I think it was song 3 from the 1, 2, 3 that I renamed it to. And cover 3. Let's copy and paste this a few times. So this first one is gonna be background music, rando, other. I believe this was cover 1 and song 1. Next one is song 2. I think it was Havana. I have no idea what the album was for this song. So let's just paste in something like that. And let's see if I spell her name correctly. That looks to be right, hopefully. Cover 2 and song 2. So we got 1, 2, and 3. Let's copy and paste this a couple times so we have more than 3 songs. There'll be duplicates, of course, in the array, but at least we'll have more to visualize. So hit Command B. Your app should still be building. And let's see, before we configure the cell, let's actually go to our storyboard and bring a table view in and set some visuals up for our user interface. So main.storyboard, we want to select this view controller first, come up here, hit editor, we want to hit embed in navigation controller. This will give us a navigation bar up here. So select this one, check the box to prefer a large title. Select the bar here and give it a title of music. Next, we want to bring a UI table view onto the screen, drop it in, and right-click this, connect it to the table outlet. We want to add some constraints. So hit the table, then hit this. We want 0 all the way around so the table takes the entirety width and height of the screen. Select the table, bump this prototype cell number to 1, so we have 1 cell. Hit the cell, and we want to do 2 things on here. The first thing is give it a cell identifier. Next thing is change the style to be subtitle. Hit Command B, and we should still be building. Let's go back to our view controller. And in here, let's set up some of the cell properties. We want to set up basically 4 things: the name of the song, the album name, the image for the song, so the album cover, and a indicator, like a little arrow, to show that the cell is tappable. So the arrow is the easiest. It's the accessory type. We'll set that to disclosure indicator. Let's actually first pull out the song here from our songs array. Next, we want to say cell.textLabel.text equals song.name. We want the detail label to be song.albumName. And before we run it, let's make the font size a little larger for the text label and the detailed text label. So we're going to say cell.textLabel.font is UI font, font with a name. It'll be Helvetica bold, size will be 18. Copy and paste that. Let's get rid of the bold, and this will be the detail label. And let's make this 17 to be a little smaller. Hit Command R to build and run. And we should see our songs if I didn't break anything. So we see our songs, and I actually missed the image over here. So let's also do cell.imageView.image is a UI image with a name. And the name is going to be our song.imageName. So hit Command R one more time, and we should be good to go in terms of our list of songs. So you can see that this image isn't a perfect square, so it's not aligned properly. You can always fix that with the image itself or creating a custom cell. So I'm not going to bore you guys with the code for that. The cells are a little smushed together. So let's create another function, rather implement another table function. Height for row, and let's return 100 and see if that makes them a little better. So it looks like they're still smushed because the image takes up the height of the cell, but things are a little bigger, so let's just keep it like that. So the next thing we want to do is create another view controller, which is going to be our player. So let's come over here, let's close this audio folder, right click and new file. We want a CocoaTux class, a player view controller. That'll create a new file. Let's get rid of this and talk about how we're going to implement this. So the first thing we want to set up on here are 2 properties to pass in our data. And we want to pass in a variable which is position, which will be the position of which song you selected. And that'll be the song that starts playing when you select a cell. But we also want to pass in our songs array. And the reasoning is, like I mentioned earlier, we need to know what song is next and prior to the one we're playing if the user hits the forward or backwards button. And what else do we need? We're going to be designing the bulk of this user interface with code just because it makes it simpler than adding a bunch of constraints. But we're going to create an IB outlet for a holder view. And the reason we're going to create this is because it makes it easier to align stuff on the screen with auto layout, because this holder is going to basically take care of the safe area for us. So a safe area would be like making sure your user interface elements are not underneath the notch on a iPhone 10 or higher. But anyways, we're going to override the view did layout subviews function. And this function gets called once the subviews in the storyboard are laid out. in this case our holder, and we only want to configure the subview elements like the image, buttons, volume slider one time. So we're going to say if holder.subviews.count is 1, call a configure function, which will set up a bunch of things. So set up the actual player itself, set up user interface elements. And before we fill out the remainder of this controller, let's go add this view controller to the storyboard, and that'll wrap up our storyboard implementation. So let's find a UI view controller in here, bring it on in. Let's set its class to be a player controller, like so. Let's also set its storyboard ID to be player. That's how we're going to present it. Let's bring a UI view onto this controller and connect it to our holder outlet, like so. Click on the holder, and we want to add some constraints, so 0, 0, 0, 0. And I believe that's all we need to do in here. Let's go to our original view controller that lists out our songs. And if you recall, we added this bit of code here to present that screen in the didSelectRow table view function. Now what we can do is we can say this storyboard instantiates a controller with player as a player view controller. And before we actually present it, let's assign the properties. It's going to be vc.songs equals songs, and vc.position is position. And this position is right up here, and songs is the array of songs that we actually have on this controller. So if you hit Command R, you should build and run the application in your simulator. And when you hit one of these songs, you should get this screen popping up, which is empty for now, but nothing should be crashing. So essentially, when we present this screen, this controller has all of our songs and the position of our selection. So we need to basically update the user interface as well as start playing the music. So let's go do that now.